Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. A victory, a win, a cup semi-final first leg triumph. Can you call it a triumph when it's technically halfway through the tie? I'm going to call it a triumph anyway. Against the top team in the Premier League, top team in Europe right now in Liverpool. Spurs did really well. They did. There's loads to talk about the game. We'll talk about various transfer stuff and potential things and maybe what might not happen, what might happen. But yeah, loads to dive into. A little bit of controversy, although I think that was just an error more than controversy. And yeah, ultimately, it was just what Spurs and Ange Postecoglou needed. They really did. The emotion was written all over Postecoglou's face, in his actions, in the ways a lot of his body movements as well on the day. He's normally quite a vocal presence. People have this weird thing about him that he does nothing, stands there doing nothing. I think I've heard that about every Spurs manager. Probably Conte was the one who wasn't ever given that tag. And when he did start to become a little bit like that, people thought there was something dreadfully wrong with him. It was just that he kind of was starting to check out, I think, really. He was also ill, of course, wasn't he, at one point? But with Postecoglou, he is quite vocal. We're right above him in the press box. We see what he's like. He's constantly shouting, constantly trying to get his ideas across. Not get his ideas across, but make sure they're doing what he wants them to do. I think it's just unfortunate that he also has quite extreme reactions when things aren't going his well, in terms of he can slump over, he puts his hands on his face, all this stuff, and that's the kind of photos you see, and I think people maybe associate that with him. However, no, he is quite a lively presence on the touchline. It's kind of a strange way that narrative has gone about him. Last night, in particular, I feel like in the last couple of games, he's really started to become quite emotional on the touchline. I think it is to do with his situation, as I've got a quote coming in a moment. But last night, Pedro Porro went through to that chance and chipped it just wide. The one where Lucas Bergvall tackled Alisson and the ball came back out to Pedro. I think it went back to Bergvall. Bergvall played it to Porro and he should have buried it and chipped it just wide. Postecoglou fell to the floor. He fell to the floor in absolute, what the world just happened to us. And yeah, I mean, fair play. You know, he's 59 and falling to the floor and getting up quite easily. I'm not at that age and I would probably struggle to get back up if I fell to the floor, but that's probably more to do with the marathon training, which is destroying me one limb by limb. But yeah, and there was when Lucas Bergvall did score the winner, Postecoglou punched the air with delight and he was hugging his coaches. There was a lot in there in terms of just a different. I think it's just emotion. I think that's what it is. And he was asked after the game, is that fair to say he's been looked more emotional in games? And he said, well, yeah. I mean, it's been an emotional time, mate. You know, it's like I keep saying, I'm a human being. Like all of us, we're in these roles of managers and we're supposed to... I mean, I understand we've got positions of responsibility, but we're still human beings in the core and we react to things. I don't like the fact that people who are working really hard for this club on and off the field have not had that feeling of victory. I don't feel great about supporters not having that feeling of victory. It weighs heavily on me, mate. It's my responsibility. So yeah, you know, I'm a little bit more emotional than I usually am. But I guess that also probably means I do care and I think that's still important. So such is this strange nature of Spurs right now under Postecoglou that you look at their last 6 wins. They've beaten Man City, Aston Villa, Man City again, Southampton, Manchester United, and now Liverpool, the top team in the Premier League. It's so weird. I think it kind of goes to show that this version of Spurs can beat anyone on their day. Even with a threadbare, knackered squad full of injuries and battered to the hilt. They can still beat anyone. They've got that ability. And I think it's for that reason, of course they can lose to anyone as well, I should stress, but I think it's the ability to beat anyone that I think keeps the majority of fans behind him. And I mean, last night in the final minutes, a massive percentage of the crowd were singing Ange Postecoglou's name, especially the South Stand. It was booming out of there. He's retained that support even though the results have not been good enough, and he knows that. And he's managed to retain that support longer than many of his predecessors, really, certainly the recent ones as well. perhaps, I think we've said this before, that it's because his predecessors not only lost the fans, or Conte probably didn't lose the fans so much, but the football was not great. But certainly these managers lost sections of the dressing room as well, the actual players, and I think that's a key thing as well. Because Postecoglou, he's got the dressing room. He has not lost it at all. You can see that. It's clear in the way they play football, the way they press, the way they fight for him, the way they try to play the exact style of football he wants them to play. And to be honest, when we talk about these big wins they've had, that's the proof they need as a team. Look, if we play this football, it will beat this, that, them, and all these teams. It's just a case of doing the other physical stuff that they need to be able to do to maintain that against some of the sides that they really should be beating. And of course, finding ways around those other teams that maybe will sit back a little bit more. And I think it's kind of a show, the fans singing his name. He's got the majority of probably definitely the match-going fans, and imagine a lot more kind of beyond that as well. And we always know there's social media doesn't give you the best idea, does it? It's often a vocal minority and things like that. And it just feels like nights like that show why he's got the backing. Because he's trying to implement something amid chaos. Tottenham Hotspur is usually chaos anyway, but right now it just feels like even more so. And there was no let up from the adversity last night whatsoever. He got Rodrigo Bentancur back from suspension and lost him again within 6 minutes of this match. Spurs started brightly. They were really up in Liverpool's face from the start. The crowd were great. The crowd were going. It was, I think, Radu Dragic, who was terrific last night, had a shot that Alisson saved low down. And in the aftermath, we quickly realised, and the players realised even faster, that Rodrigo Bentancur had fallen to the floor motionless. Or was on the floor motionless, I should say. And fair play to Pedro Porro, really quick thinking, not only flagged people over, but it looks like he put him in a recovery position as well. It looked to me, at first we were a bit like, what happened there? No one could kind of see the contact. But I think on watching it back, what looks to have happened, I could be wrong, but this is just my opinion, I think he whipped his head round to try and get a header that he missed. And in doing so, whipped round and then hit the ground really hard, like almost like whiplash kind of hard, because his whole body and like his arm and everything jerked up in the air as he banged down. Obviously, again, I hate to bring up social media, but there was all kind of wild theories going on and things like that. But ultimately, it looked like he'd smacked his head really hard to me. They were working for a long time, 11 minutes. What I would say is that the players around him, while initially concerned and calling staff over to help, then when he was getting treated, were very much going about their business. It wasn't like this sitting around, like worried kind of thing. People were going over to him occasionally, but I think also it looks like he was conscious, and there's certainly photos I've seen where he's sitting up and pointing, and maybe that kind of, I guess, dissolves any fears that the players might have, maybe. It took a while, and just to kind of make sure he's absolutely fine, and they strapped him to a stretcher, I guess maybe just in case of any neck issues there. He was taken off to hospital, conscious and talking, of course, and there for observation as well. And Postecoglou was asked after the game exactly what had happened, and he confirmed it was a head injury, but he said, I don't want to speculate because I don't really know either. All I know is he was conscious when he came off. Obviously, it was some sort of head injury, but he was conscious when he was coming off the field, and he's been taken to hospital for observation, but I'm not really clear on how it happened. It's not my area. Unless I get a doctor out here, I'm not going to speculate because it's just not fair on people around him, but it was a head injury, and there was concern from players out there, so obviously there was something going on. From what I understand, Spurs didn't use a concussion sub, which is interesting. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or not, but that's what I'm told. It wasn't a concussion sub. Later that night, Bentancur posted on Instagram, I think it was an Instagram story, a photo of him in his hospital bed with his partner, with his thumbs up, saying, all good, guys. Thank you for the messages. Congratulations for the victory, boys. There's no point really speculating what exactly happened, because we'll get, hopefully, proper information tomorrow at Postecoglou's press conference at Hotspur Way, because, we just need to see exactly what happened, really, rather than just guessing. This is what we do. It's just our natural instinct, isn't it? And yeah, Postecoglou spoke again afterwards about not only how calm his team were afterwards, but also just battling again from adversity. He said, "I'm very proud. Again, we had to deal with some adversity tonight. We started the game really well, I thought. Then obviously we lose Rodrigo in the way it happened. It was quite distressing to see a teammate go down in that manner. Again, we had to compose ourselves and deal with that and reorganise. I'm super proud of the players. I have been all along. It hasn't been through the want of trying that our results haven't been as good. It's certainly not been on them. It's just that we haven't been able to get the consistency to get the results that we need. I'm just proud that they feel good tonight, that they get the rewards of their hard work. Our fans as well. We've put them through a tough time. I thought they were outstanding tonight. We haven't achieved anything, but I just think that feeling of having a victory against a top opponent in a big game, I'm really pleased for everyone." And the funny thing is as well, is Postecoglou has been tweaking his formation recently. It's one of those things that probably hasn't been noticed because it's just easier to say, he's only got a plan A. And he actually has tweaked it. We've kind of noticed this in recent games. It's become like a 4-2-1, like a 4-2-1-3 in a way. I mean, technically you'd still call that a 4-3-3, but the fact is that it's now got more so than a flat three or one behind the two. It's got two holding midfielders of sorts. It's difficult to call them holding midfielders when especially one of them is still going to act like a number 8 and bomb on. But they are more naturally pulling a little bit deeper and allowing a more natural central number 10. And yeah, last night that was originally, it was going to be Bergvall playing in that role with Bentancur and Bissouma behind him. Then when he went off, Bergvall moved back into the deeper role with Bissouma, and Kulusevski went into number 10 role as well. But obviously, I mean, we're going to talk about Bergvall, but his energy levels were incredible last night. He was getting up and down the pitch just ridiculously. But on paper, that midfield, you'd look at it and you think, there's Bissouma, and then you've kind of got maybe more, you've got one 18-year-old, more attacking-minded midfielder perhaps, and Kulusevski. Surely against Liverpool, that's going to splutter and fail against the might of their midfield. Because they didn't really change too much up in terms of quality in the attack and midfield. It's maybe defence where they made a couple of changes. But yeah, the midfield, and they did really well, the three of them. They did. Both sides had pretty big chances in the second half. Porro missed that big opportunity I spoke about earlier. Dragishin stopped the ball. Alexander-Arnold shot on the line at the other end. What else did we have? Antonin Kinsky, who we'll talk about. Kinsky, he made 2 saves from Darwin Núñez. And of course we had Dominic Solanke went through as a Porro pass, strode through and almost passed the ball into net. But it was a lovely finish. But unfortunately, VAR noticed that he was a fraction offside, and that was pulled back and explained. We got the historic first ever mic'd up referee explaining a VAR decision with Stuart Atwell. It was very NFL-like, although 2 sides to it. One, don't blow your whistle, Stuart, when you got the microphone going. It was very, very loud and painful. That's definitely something they're going to have to not do and be aware that they're on the mic, because out on the stadium, everyone was like, ah! It was just not nice. They weren't singing badly. They were screaming. They weren't really screaming. And the other element to it is, do we really need an explanation about a VAR? An offside? If it's a really simple offside like that it's offside or not, that's quite linear, or that is exactly linear. That is quite literally linear. I didn't feel it needed it. It was like, and he was offside. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. That's great. Thank you. Thanks for letting us know that he was across a line that he shouldn't have crossed. I understand it if it was like last week's one. With the handball that never was and things like that, and trying to explain that. Although there's a quote from Postecoglou that's coming where he essentially said, would that really make anyone happy to hear that? Or are they just going to boo and it would be really awful atmosphere because of that? But yeah, so we had that anyway. We had the NFL style referee explaining things, which I don't think it's necessary. Whatever, crack on. It's just another little delay to the game, isn't it? But on the night, Liverpool had more shots, 14-9, but Spurs actually had more big chances. They had 4 big chances to Liverpool's 3. But of course, the defining few minutes in the game came late on, and they revolved around a certain young Swede. First, let's talk about first thing. He earlier in the game got a yellow card. I think it was second half as well. Actually, I don't think it was that long before. Got a yellow card for, I can't remember for the life of me who he went in on. Maybe it was Diaz. I can't remember. But he went in for a sliding challenge where didn't get the ball or the man. The man went flying forward, and it was a yellow card. It was a tough one. There was no connection. You could maybe argue that the person had to jump over him because he'd slid in and blocked their entire path. But ultimately, probably a tough first yellow. Then... And we're all kind of thinking, don't do it, Lucas, don't do it. And he did it. He dived in on Costa Simicas. And yeah, at any other stage or moment of the game, that's a second yellow. He absolutely hacked him down. And it didn't happen on this occasion because Liverpool were breaking up the pitch and continued to break up the pitch. Stuart Atwell pointed at the ball rather than playing on. And when the move was finished and didn't come to anything, he did not return to give Bergvall a second yellow card. Yeah, I mean, in his mind, pointing at the ball rather than waving play on suggests that he thought the tackle was fine. The problem was for Liverpool, of course, is that Simicas was off the pitch, needing treatment after that. In that time, Spurs broke up the other end of the pitch. Porro plays a beautiful ball into the path of Solanke, who battles away, gets the ball, lays it on the plate beautifully for Bergvall, and Bergvall, of course, slams it into the bottom right corner of the net. Spurs have been here before. The man who shouldn't be on the pitch scores the winning goal. I mean, it was Jota, technically, wasn't it, with that high boot on Oliver Skip a couple of years back. So, yeah, Liverpool players are incensed. I think anyone associated with Spurs would have gone the other way around. I think we all would have been very annoyed about it. I don't think there's any denying that. There was some confusion afterwards about the rules and whether they were applied correctly or not. Both managers spoke about being told this. So, to get all a bit technical, the International Football Association's board's laws of the game state if the referee plays the advantage for an offence for which a caution or sending off would have been issued had play been stopped, this caution or sending off must be issued when the ball is next out of play. However, if the offence was denying the opposing team an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, the player is cautioned for unsporting behaviour. But if the offence was interfering with or stopping a promising attack, the player is not cautioned. So, yeah, technically, that's the Bergvall part of it, I think. And so, technically, according to that rule, if Stuart Atwell if Stuart Atwell did play advantage, then he would have had to go back and caution Bergvall. Sorry, he didn't have to go back. I'm getting confused just saying it. Yes. If he did play advantage, then he did not have to go back and book the player because it was deemed to be stopping a promising attack. Then you don't stop it for that and go back and book the player. Right. But, just to muddy the waters further, the rules also state that advantage should not be applied in situations involving serious foul play, violent conduct, or a second cautionable offence unless there is a clear opportunity to score a goal. The question really is all lovely reading all these all these rules that seem to contradict each other, but ultimately what it comes down to is, did Stuart Atwell play on? That's the key, actually. All of the other stuff is a bit of a byproduct, because if he did, then that comes into play. But if he didn't, it's meaningless. And that appears to be the latter, because I've watched it back and he points to the ball rather than playing on. And that is essentially him thinking that Bergvall got a touch, which we know he didn't. But the trouble is, if he doesn't play on, if he doesn't wave play on, then he can't go back and book someone for a challenge that he deemed to be fine and thought he was touching the ball. And the problem for Liverpool is that VAR can't intervene. VAR can't intervene to give a yellow card. That's not part of the game. It could only intervene to hand a red card or a dangerous play and things like that was missed. So essentially, I think that's actually the crux of it. I think too much time after the game was focused on this rule when really people just needed to look to see whether he was doing a moving play on. Waving play on. I keep thinking the word waving. So, yeah, that for me is the key part. On the slot, to be fair, he was pretty calm afterwards. He said it was a good goal. Let that be clear. Ball in behind, cut back across. Bergvall stayed calm and scored and finished it off. I don't think you're interested in that, though, but the moment before. I was saying I thought I saw and sat here in the press conference room and unhappy with decisions made on Saturday. People say decisions even themselves out, but I'm not a believer of that. I believe you can be unlucky or lucky in decisions in a season. Yes, a decision went against them on Saturday and went in favour of them today, which of course is very unlucky for us. And he said, I never felt that we were going to lose this game, especially not after the first 15-20 minutes, as I felt Spurs started better than us. But after that, I felt we controlled and had most of the game in their half and had much more ball possession. A moment like this, if you go down to 10 men for a few seconds against a team as good as Tottenham, it is far from ideal. I think anyone would prefer the card was given than have advantage played 40 yards from their own goal. The other question is, was it reckless enough to play advantage and come back and say the tackle was still reckless and enough to give a yellow? He had to tell everyone what his decision was, the ref this is, but unfortunately he didn't have to do it for this decision. So essentially he's saying, like the offside, he should have, Stuart Atwell, gone on the mic and discussed this one. But then we're just going to pour over the minutiae of all of this, really, aren't we, if that's the case. But yeah, I just think it comes down to whether he waved play on or not. Struggling with that expression. It's really not that hard either. Postecoglou went into this really lengthy monologue about the game when he was asked about Bergvall's second half that never was, second yellow that never was. I'm going to try and rattle through it. It's quite a long monologue, but I'm going to try and I'm almost going to do it in a chipmunk voice, but I'm going to say it quite quickly. He said, I spoke about it after the game last time. I think my comments were misinterpreted. I didn't criticise the referee or the decision. I didn't think the decision was right about the handball, but as I said, it's very hard at the moment. It's very confusing to understand certain elements of the game. Now, we've been told consistently in the last few weeks, because I've been screaming about it from the sidelines, because a lot of teams have got away with a lot of fouls with us without bookings, because the referee plays advantage. We've been told consistently that if we play advantage, as long as it's not a cynical foul, then the player does not get cautioned. So that's been relayed to us on a weekly basis because we feel like that's been happening. That's one of the things I was bemoaning last weekend. The certain players who were repeatedly fouling, we were getting advantage but no bookings. That's what I'm talking about. I'm really surprised at how people in this country are so easily letting the game change so much so quickly. It's changed more since VAR has come in, since I've been involved in the past 50 years. We've never used to debate offsides. We never used to debate handballs. We never used to debate holding in the box. We never used to debate so many things, it seems like. I disagree with some of those. There's always been debate about loads of those things. Did everyone really love the announcement today? Did that give you a real buzz about, seriously? But now and again, look, I understand, my understanding of it is that this is what people want. That's what I keep getting told. I understand that, and I understand, we're not going to, VAR is going to be there. Technology is going to be part of life. But it's like my wife and our kids. We know technology, but she limits screen time. Why? Slow things down, I think. We've just got to be careful about constantly, why do we want to change the game so much? And I know I'm going to be the old bloke in the stands that keeps shouting boo every time, and I'll be the only one. But I just thought people would be a little bit more protective about the sanctity of the game. That's what I was talking about. I wasn't criticising referees. I've never criticised. I didn't think the red decision was right, but it's just the way the game. I think there's a lot of confusion at the moment. That's my belief that the game is changing on the basis of technology, and I'm saying, why isn't anyone speaking up about it? Especially in this country, who, for all intents and purposes, you guys think you're custodians of the game. You've got a song that says it's coming home. This is your game. And yet it takes an Aussie from the other side of the world to be the one that's most conservative about changes. That's his long monologue. It was much longer in practice because he did not rattle through it quite like that. But yeah, I get what he's saying. I don't think too many people are going to disagree with that. But I've said it before, I'm not a massive fan of the whole VAR side of things. Absolutely fine with offside, to be honest. As long as it's kind of semi-automated and it's quick and it gets it done. It's offside, fair enough. You don't really complain about it. No one really complained about the Solanke one last night. It's tight, but essentially, it was offside. And I've got no issue with goal line technology and knowing where the ball's gone over or not, but it's all the other stuff, constantly throwing and then the time it takes. I'm with him on that, but I'm not entirely sure I agree with things weren't debated before. Of course they were. So anyway, that's the controversial part of it. Let's get back to the positives, because there were lots of positives. And one was a certain checkmate. Apologies for that. Clive Allen called Antonin Kinsky's debut one of the best he's seen at Tottenham. And it was definitely very, very, very good. Obviously, 21 years old, made the move from Slavia Prague on Sunday officially. In a move that could be worth up to £12.5 million. That includes add-ons. Had 2 training sessions with the full squad ahead of the game. He'd had one just with Rob Birch and the goalkeepers. And then he's lobbed into a Carabao Cup semi-final first leg against Liverpool, no less, in front of just under 60,000 people. It was a proper sink or swim moment. And he swam. He swam like an Olympian. He absolutely surged through that water. Rarely has someone looked so assured on the big stage on his debut and being so young. It was excellent. Immediate thing to notice is his confidence. Confidence on the ball, confidence with it at his feet. That just emanates to all of the other defenders, which was it was so great to see, because they're not always like that. They've been a little bit worried, you can tell, about the goalkeeper sometimes and what they're going to do with it. Maybe they were slightly overly composed at times, because there was one moment where Radu Dragic was just allowing a bouncing ball to go back to him despite Jota running on as well, and where this kind of awkward, scary moment where Kinsky kind of knocks it up in the air, it ends up going over Jota, and then he claims it in the air. I don't know entirely whether it was meant to be like that. It looked pretty smooth, but I don't know whether he was just trying to get a foot to it. It could be completely doing him a disservice, and it could have been exactly meant. Because to be honest, a lot of his other plays suggested that he definitely would have that in his wheelhouse. It's just so good on the ball. It's like it's second nature to him, and from what I understand, that's because of the way his dad, who bears the same name, he is senior, Kinsky senior, a Czech international goalkeeper himself. What he would do was that he kind of foresaw where goalkeeping was going, and that goalkeepers were going to have to be able to use their feet just as well as their hands. So what he did was he would have Kinsky Jr. playing as a central midfielder for much of his youth, with the eye that he was always going to become a goalkeeper. But he would play in central midfield, would learn and use his technique with his feet, and he would also make him train with his left foot a lot as well. So when the time came, he was a both-footed goalkeeper, able to play as an outfield player with the ball at his feet. And you can see it. He is so comfortable. There were turns, did little kind of Cruyff turns at one point. His distribution of the ball was lovely. He could play fast, quick balls. He could do little dink chips over the attacker to the fullbacks. He did a few of those with Jed Spence. There was one over Salah's head that just kind of was a proper callback to Forster knocking one of those straight to Salah. And yeah, it's just, and he would sometimes try these pinged long balls as well, like those kind of flat kicks, not the hoof up in the air, like a proper sideways kick into someone's path. And a couple of those, one in either half, he got Postecoglou applause for it, who appreciated the effort. Even when one went nowhere near, I think it was Solanke he was aiming for, he was still very much appreciative of it, Postecoglou, because he tried. And that's what he looks for as well. And we know that about him. He was good. He's known as Tonda back home, is one of his nicknames. And Tony, I think with an I, is what they're calling him at Spurs. Certainly Ange has been calling him that since he's come in. And he also would take up this really, I actually spoke about it last video. Brandon Austin was doing this, taking up this really deep position halfway between the Spurs box and the halfway line. And it just closed up that space so much more. It's just an area we don't see Fraser Forster stand, because he knows that he's not going to be able to get back or rush out. And they can do that again. And that's kind of the whole point of having a goalkeeper that fits the system. And he spoke about it afterwards, the way he plays with the ball at his feet. Kinsky, he said, to be honest, I like to play a lot. I would say with confidence, but I don't like to risk, because I still think there's a difference between playing smart, playing with confidence, and playing with risk. He's got perfect English, by the way. It's really good. But definitely the first few minutes. I arrived 3 days ago. I had 2 full training sessions with the team and 1 with the goalkeeping coach. So I was slowly getting to know the pace. First half, I would say so-so. But in the second half, I felt confident. And this is the way I want to play later on. I have to say the boys helped me a lot during the game because they wanted to play. They were confident as well. I also have to mention the coaches, all the staff, especially the goalkeeper coach, Rob Birch, who spoke to me a lot, who gave me the vision, how the games look like, how the Premier League and now the Carabao Cup looks like. So it helped me a lot that I had this info and I could work with it. It was such a good debut. It was really, really good. The only mistake he made really was there was a Gapco shot from outside the box that he just let kind of trickle through his hands a little bit and went behind him. That's fine when you were where he was, which is quite about midway in his penalty area. The obviously worry would be had he done that and he was on his goal line, we'd have had a bit of an Eric Torzet moment on his debuts against Forest, I think, where he's ended up letting it go through him and then over the line. But that didn't happen. And the mad thing is, and it's just football, isn't it? That happens, the entire debut looks different. He could do everything else that he did last night, but if he lets that ball trickle over the line, it's been a terrible debut, an embarrassment, all of that. It's just the way it works for goalkeepers. It just takes one moment to ruin it all. But it didn't. His positioning was fine, so it didn't affect him. He's going to get more tests probably aerially from set pieces, you would imagine. Liverpool didn't threaten so much, I felt, in that respect, but obviously at the Emirates next week, that's going to be a whole different ball game. But yeah, he just did really, really well. Constantly speaking to his players around him throughout. You could see that. Laugh with them. He seems to have settled in quite quickly. And I mean, goalkeepers are quite a strong breed, aren't they? But yeah, he was having these little chats. There was a nice moment where, even though it was disallowed, he had this massive hug with Archie Gray after Solanke got the ball over the line. The big celebration with various players. He actually went over to Solanke at one point. He kind of came back because he was trying to say something. And he said something in Solanke's ear, which Solanke laughed at. And I mean, it's just minor things. These aren't it's nothing for the aggregators to aggregate. But it just kind of shows you how he's settling in, I think. And it's just quite nice how quickly he's settled into the club. And there was a nice moment after all of that when he went to the touchline and I think it was the bottom of the West Stand. His sister was there. I think maybe her name's Andrea. I think I saw that in one of the reports out there. And yeah, just a really lovely moment where just his family being so emotional. This is, I mean, what a way to do it. You've got a dream, haven't you? A young boy growing up, he would have dreamt of playing in a huge stadium like that, 60,000 people, a Premier League club, playing Liverpool, in a semi-final. It's massive. And he did so well. To keep a clean sheet against Mohamed Salah and co, absolutely nailed it on his debut. A couple of good saves, like I say, one with his wrist, one with his hand from Núñez. Good reflexes. Can't really ask for much more from his game on that night. And Postecoglou said, brilliant, fantastic. I got a sense when I spoke to him before we signed him that he had a bit about him in terms of assuredness that probably belied his years. I threw him he's got a lisp. I threw him a mammoth task today to play against the best team arguably in the world at the moment in a big game, a semi-final, and he just handled it awfully well. Credit to Johan Lange and his team. They were really big on him as a footballer who's going to fit our style and work really hard to make it happen, and you can see why. He's an outstanding footballer. I mean, he got a spare moment for Brandon Austin. It was his birthday yesterday, and he found himself back on the bench after such an impressive debut for him against Newcastle. But to be fair, it wasn't like he did that and then Spurs went, right, you're out of it. It looks like the deal for Kinsky was kind of rumbling along and took a big step forward on New Year's Day. So it was always likely to happen. There's some quotes that's come out from Kinsky's agent, Victor Collar. He said, he was talking about kind of essentially the two, I should also say, I think I said this in the last video, that Lange and his team have been scouting and tracking Kinsky for a long time, since they were at Villa, and on his various loan spells that he had as well. But yeah, his agent, Kohler, explained what had happened between the two bosses at the top of the club, really, Levy and his counterpart. He said, Slavia is a tough and fair negotiator. It was very fair, but on the other hand, very difficult and tough. We even got into a situation where Mr. Tverdik, I'm going to go for as a pronunciation, said, I want to do it, but he was not willing to give in. On the other side was Daniel Levy, who said he was also interested in doing it and completing the transfer, but he was not willing to give in either. So it turned out that sometimes even those personal meetings really break the ice, and those people can find consensus better. Our team was still sitting at a petrol station in Prague almost until 10 p.m. on December 31st because everything was closed on New Year's Eve. And the subsequent development was that on January the 1st, Daniel Levy flew in himself and the 2-day negotiations in Prague began. He had Johan Lange with him. The negotiations were intense, stretching late into the night, but it worked and I'm happy about that. It was a beautiful test to see if people and organisations this dominant can find their way to each other. And he also spoke about this, great insight, if it's the case, of what kind of happened within amongst the scouts. He said, Tottenham trusted Kinsky and the whole team of people in that recruitment department, which includes Chief Scout Rob McKenzie and his 11 people. They agreed on Tony as one of the 2 players. They all raised their hand and voted from 0 to 10 for him, and all of them were a 10. Look, his debut was another success for Lange and McKenzie and the Chief Scout, Alex Fraser. It will have not gone unnoticed in the department that last night the star players really were Kinsky, Gray, Bergvall, Dragoshin and Solanke, who were all recommended and signed by Lange and his team. And he played his part in getting the deals done as well. So, look, we know that there should have been a lot more to the summer transfer window. We said it at the time that it needed more ready-to-made players as well as what they got. But certainly it was a great advert for the young players they brought in as well yesterday. So what happens next in terms of the goalkeepers? You've got 3 goalkeepers now who've all got long-term contracts in Kinsky, Vicario and Brandon Austin. It makes sense for me, and I know this might be a little bit cruel on Fraser Forster especially, I would concentrate on those 3 goalkeepers now. Let Brandon Austin play on Sunday at Tamworth in the FA Cup. Let him play in the 2 Europa League games that Kinsky can't play and he's not eligible yet to play in. Because with no disrespect intended to Fraser Forster, but his and Alfie Whiteman's contracts are up in the summer. You're going to need Austin again at some point. You've seen this season that the 3rd choice goalkeeper is going to be required at times. We've seen it in previous seasons. So why not build up his confidence and his experience now? He's not an untested goalkeeper anymore, but you can top up his experience, absolutely. So I've got to admit, I'd be slightly disappointed, I think, if Fraser Forster came back in for the European games. I don't know if Postecoglou is a sentimental type that would do it for the sake of that. It just kind of feels like you've given Forster a chance. He's done well and he's earned the opportunity. Why not let him do it? I should state on Kinsky, I said in the last video, and I didn't realise there'd been a change in the rules. He can play, if Spurs progress to knockout rounds in Europe, he can be registered. Someone else would have to come out, but he can be registered because there was a rule change that means that even if you've played now previous in the competition for one club, you can play for another in a different stage. So you've just got to, if Spurs get through, which you would hope they will, he will be able to play from the knockout stages, but they would have to remove someone from the squad. So presumably Fraser Forster for him would make sense. And you've got your 3 long-term goalkeepers in that squad. And someone else would have to come out if Jed Spence is going to get in there. But yeah, it was a really exciting, promising debut, a real glimpse into the future. Guillermo Vicario was down there with the other injured players. He gave Kinsky a massive hug after the game, which was kind of fitting because there's going to be this friendly rivalry now because they are in a battle, those 2. Kinsky has not come along to be a backup or anything like that. He has come there to play. And if he continues as he did on his debut, Vicario is probably not going to get straight back in. I would imagine that Postecoglou would be very kind of reluctant to take out a goalkeeper who's doing very well. So this is a big chance the next month and a bit for Kinsky to really kind of have a go at trying to make this position his own and then have that proper battle with Vicario when he comes back. So I think it's what Vicario needs as well. I think all goalkeepers need a bit of competition. It's something that's been lacking at Spurs for years. And hopefully this will make a big difference to both of them as well. But it's not just about the goalkeeper. So many good young players yesterday, just showing what an exciting young nucleus there is in this team. Obviously, Lucas Bergvall was the match winner and controversial man. And I think it will have pleased the staff a lot to see how good his fitness was. He has looked tired in some other games. And even against Newcastle, I said in the last video, while his substitution was booed, I do think he was tiring and he did need to come off at that point. Whereas he lasted so well yesterday. I mean, just it's there for all to see. In the 86th minute, he's sprinting pitch-long run, gets up there, slots home Solanke's pass. And that's because of his increased fitness. On the whole, apart from that one sliding tackle that was the controversial one, he was pretty disciplined in his performance as well, really. I said to you before that Peter Kinsky told me, actually, there's a few people, to be fair, around Broma Poikana and Jurgarden said that he would probably need around 6 months to adapt to the pace of the Premier League, but he would. And here we are, 6 months on, and look at him. He's absolutely found the groove, I feel like. He needed a night like the one in Galatasaray. A real kind of almost like a worst case scenario of how kind of his game went. And he really responded. He has every performance since then has got better and better and better. And now he's starting games and doesn't deserve to come out of the team. He's playing that well. I mean, you might well do for Sunday because it's a cup game, but he's definitely kind of put himself forward as a candidate to start in the North London derby because if you could do that against Liverpool's midfield, then you can do it against anyone. He's just so confident and comfortable on the ball. He makes space for himself really well with the way he shapes his body. He's got his radar of where everyone else is on the pitch, which is massively helpful as well. And just an understanding, I think, of the way that Postecoglou wants him to play, and he executes it really well. He's as comfortable sitting in front of the back four as like a number 6 as he is as a rampaging number 8 going up and down the pitch. So he's going to get a lot of game time because it's so easy to fit him into the system in different places to give lots of people either rest or for him to be the first choice. Postecoglou said on him, Lucas was brilliant. Like I said, I haven't lost sight of the fact that we've got two 18-year-olds, one who's playing at centre-back, it's not even his position. And I just don't think people understand the level of performance that these young guys are giving us at the moment. We had a goalkeeper on his debut. Jed's playing left-back unbelievably well. Lucas is just growing all the time. He's got that ability as a footballer to create space for himself, and he's got the quality. But he works awfully hard for the team as well. Like I said, we've been dealing with some adversity for sure, but we've had some growth in that. I've no doubt about it. That's been masked by poor results and poor form for sure. I've got no doubt when we get our players back, the foundations are really strong with a group of players we can really grow with. And I think he's right. He's been saying this a lot, but it's almost like some of these young players have been fast-tracked their development. So now, Bergvall and Gray are going to be able to be trusted first-team players constantly throughout. He's going to be able to turn to them to start games, to come off the bench, and the level and quality will not drop in the team. If anything, it could be higher with them in it. So I think it's been a painful period in terms of results, but actually for those players, we're going to see huge upsides too as the season goes on. I mean, Archie Gray. I'm considering starting a new, what was the clubs they used to have? The Appreciation Society for Archie Gray and Dominic Solanke right now, because they're just both such a consistently kind of high levels each week, despite the very different jobs they've been asked to do. But I kind of thought probably not going to start up Appreciation Societies because the previous two were for Tongi Underbelly and Oliver Skip, and both no longer play for Tottenham Hotspur. So I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to allow those two terrific players to be anywhere else. Just Archie Gray, 18 years old. He's a midfielder. He's playing as a centre-back, yet he is doing it without any fuss and just shows that he's got that ability to be wherever he's needed and look like he belongs there. He has become a centre-back. Honestly, his relationship with Radu Dragic has grown. He's got a proper central defensive partnership with him. And he's an 18-year-old central midfielder. It's just mad. I was talking to Guesty earlier when we did the podcast about the fact that, let's say, for example, if Ben Davies were to come back earlier Would you actually swap Archie Gray for Ben Davies right now? That's a big call because I think Archie Gray has been that good. And looking at his stats, he recovered the ball 6 times last night against Liverpool, 3 interceptions, won the 1 tackle he made 3 clearances, 2 headed ones, and he won the only ground duel he was involved in as well. There was a moment that just showed me and reminded me, in case I had forgotten, which I hadn't, how good a midfielder he's going to be as well. He picked up the ball in his own box, motored out of it, went past the player who was like sliding into a tackle or trying to lunge out and get him, then drove towards a group of Liverpool players with no fear whatsoever and hit this outside of his foot pass between the Liverpool players into Kulusevski's path into space running down the right. It was beautiful. And we're going to get to see that in midfield probably, hopefully within a month or so. He's just, I think we're at a period now, or at a point, certainly in his game, that when the centre-backs come back, he has to be playing. He has to be playing in midfield, Archie Gray, I would say. I would be putting him in there. Whether it's as a 6 or an 8, I think he deserves to be in there. I think he's earned that right. And I think we will get to see an even better version of Archie Gray. Very excited, as you can tell, very excited about what a player he's going to become. As I am with Lucas Bergvall as well. But I just think Archie Gray is slightly further ahead in terms of his adaptation because of what he's had to go through, whereas Bergvall just starting to hit that sweet spot hopefully now. And both 18 years old, they've got so much growth to go. This is like just a tiny percentage of what they can be, which is, it's very exciting. And Jed Spence, massive credit to Jed Spence. I thought he was terrific yesterday. Again up against Salah. And Salah last night really didn't get much of a sniff. He had to keep coming inside. And that's credit to Jed Spence, because often when you're playing on the wrong side as a fullback, the player is going to get down your outside. They're going to get crosses in because you're turning onto your weaker side, the side you're not used to kind of defending against. But actually Salah was being forced to come inside, which actually was better for Spence because it was putting him on his right foot. I just thought he did really, really well. And again, it does make a little bit of a mockery of the fact that he's only just getting his opportunities now in recent weeks because of the injuries, when clearly he had the capacity to play this kind of football. He just the way he does right or left, he knows how to play the Postecoglou way. They give him the ball in tight spots because he's very calm and composed with it. There are a few moments when he got the ball deep on the left-hand side and 2, let's say, Liverpool players around him. He would either dribble away from them, dribble past them, or he hit a couple of these lovely outside of the foot curling balls down the touchline. One to Son, one to Solanke, I think, in the first half. He's just doing really well. And it was a slightly different game for him because, again, Postecoglou, who never tweaks his tactics apparently, the fullbacks weren't pushing up as high. They were being kind of told to only do that on set occasions. Otherwise, they were kind of hanging back a little bit and let the wingers do the job up wide. And I just so happy for Jed Spence. He's turned things around. The talent has always been there. It's just about making sure everything else about his game was there, really, and it was impressing Postecoglou. And he's now at a stage where the doggy comes back, and it could be 2 Italians that could be very put out, have their nose put out of joint, because the doggy could come back, and the doggy hasn't had a great season. It's had a mixed one, obviously coming back after surgery at the end of last season. I think he's got a battle on his hands. I think Jed Spence is showing that he can be a left back as well as a right back, and I also wonder how that's going to impact the window right now, because again, you asked me a couple of weeks ago, and I still think a left back is needed at the club, another natural left back. Yet if you look at it right now, a doggy back in 4 to 5 weeks, you got Reguilon, you got Spence. It's actually probably less a pressing need than it was. I asked Postecoglou actually on Tuesday about left back, and he said it would have to be someone that just fits perfectly, and then they would move for them. I still think you need another one for the future going forward. So a bit like Kinsky, that if you can get someone earlier than you would, they were planning to get Kinsky in the summer, but they went for him in January. Yeah, if they could do that with a left back, then absolutely go for it. And obviously, Reguilon's heading towards the end of his contract. Ben Davies is not really considered a left back anymore, certainly in the Postecoglou system. So yeah, I think I can still see it, but Jed Spence is making a terrific case for himself. Yeah, absolutely brilliant, really. Yeah, just consistently good as well. It's not even like he's been having a few good games. He's been playing really well throughout matches, and his stamina's building up. And I do think another thing that Spurs get with having Jed in the back line is he's just a bit taller. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just looking at it the wrong way, and maybe Doggie's the same height. I don't know, but he just feels like maybe he's better in the air, but he just gives them that extra bit of kind of defensive weapon when dealing with balls slung into the box. Spurs were pretty good yesterday at getting those kind of curling free kicks and crosses and corners away. And I do think that's part of having him there as well. You've suddenly got him. You've got Archie Gray's good in the air. Actually, Lucas Bergvall's good in the air as well. You've got Dragishin, who's excellent in the air as well. And Basuma's pretty good in the air too. Solanke will come back. And yeah, you've suddenly got all of these players that can be more effective from set pieces. And yeah, shock horror, they kept a clean sheet. I asked Postecoglou after the game last night. He'd just done this big, long monologue about all serious stuff about VAR. And it kind of came to me and I was like, yeah, I'm still going to ask it anyway. And I just said to him, it's just an Archie Gray question. It's like, Archie Gray, I mean, how is he doing this? Playing every 3 days as a centre-back and doing what he's doing and putting in those kind of levels of consistency. And you could see, rather than him going I don't know, being disappointed, it was less of a hard-hitting question, I suppose. He actually really responded well. He was really excited to answer about it. And he just said, and in a position he's never played, mate, he's never played there. An 18-year-old. Name me another Premier League team that's got 2 18-year-olds and one playing out of position consistently. I'm so happy that they're at a football club. And in 2 or 3 years' time, I just pray to God I'm the beneficiary of their talent, mate. Because if someone else is getting it, I won't be happy. And I love that. It said so much in one moment. It said how amazing these two players are going to be, Bergvall and Gray. But it also suggested that he might want to break the pattern of being at clubs for 2 to 3 years and want to be there for 4 or 5 years so he can enjoy the fruits of all of his labours with these young, very talented players, because there's a lot there. You're not even thinking about Mikey Moore. I mean, Radu Dragishin, who was brilliant. I thought Radu Dragishin was superb last night. He gets a lot of flack sometimes, and I keep kind of trying to tell people he's 22 years old. He's still learning everything about being a defender, let alone a Premier League one. And I actually think his ability with the ball is kind of underrated as well. He's seen as this lumbering defender that can't use the ball technically, but he actually can. And I've likened him before, and I continue with this, Toby Alderweireld-esque in terms of he can hit a lovely pass, but then he'll hit one that isn't so good. Whereas Alderweireld, people just remember the good ones for some reason. Alderweireld was so 50-50. Sometimes 35-40% of his passes were good. The rest were just aimless to nobody or attempted ones that didn't reach the target. And I kind of feel like Dragishin's a bit similar. He's actually got a great kind of radar on him for a pass. And there was an interesting moment that in the game yesterday where he got a little bit told off by Postecoglou, or helped, I think is the best way to say it, is that he went for a pass to the left-hand side, and Postecoglou was trying to tell him, just open up your body, pass it to Pedro. Pedro's right there, use him. And I don't think it was any shock that the next attempt, he turned his body, moved the ball out to Porro. Porro curls it in, and that's the one that Solanke gets ruled out for offside by VAR. And in the next moment, Dragishin knocks it out wide to Porro. Porro pings it over, Solanke gets the ball, puts it in Bergvall, it's the winner. Again, he's got to get credit for what he's doing as good things, Dragishin. He was terrific last night. He's just learning his trade, and he's had to become very quickly the senior centre-back, which is not what he was meant to be. He was meant to be the youngest centre-back. And it's quite a turnaround. It really is. But yeah, as for Postecoglou, hey, I would love him to be at the club in 4 to 5 years' time, because that would mean a couple of things. That would mean Spurs have been incredibly successful, because there's no way anyone lasts at Spurs now without that being the case. It would mean that he's broken the kind of habit of his lifetime because he's really happy. And it would mean that Spurs have broken their habit of giving managers roughly 18 months each time. So, yeah, I would love it, mate. I would love it. But, yeah, so other players that would stand out. 2 senior players I'll go for. Dominic Solanke is one of them. Dominic Solanke definitely deserves an appreciation society. Absolutely does, but I'm not going to jinx him with it. He is up there with one of my favourite Spurs players right now. I just watch him, and we're all like this in the press box. We're all watching Solanke, and we're like, that was superb. Like, oh, that was so excellent. Because look, Spurs are never going to directly replace Harry Kane. They just won't. There's very few, if any, footballers that you could directly replace Harry Kane with, because he was a goal scorer and a playmaker all in one. Just an amazing player with the physicality of a number 9, but the playmaking abilities of a number 10, and a phenomenal player. However, what they've done with bringing Dominic Solanke is exactly what they needed to do, which is bring in someone completely different in a way, with some similar traits, but just has that little special something of their own, and that's what he has. The base layer is the often kind of spoken about thing for him, which is the fitness, the stamina, the desire, the pressing, the work rate, the willingness to fight for his teammates. Yes, that's all there. Never gives a defender a moment's rest. Van Dijk, I'm sure, hated playing against him. Kanate certainly did when he came on, because, you know, he got bullied really for the winning goal by Solanke. He just knocked him out of his way, just using his physical strength really. But on top of all the physical stuff and the fitness and the stamina and the work rate is a beautiful touch. Lovely technique when he takes the ball in. He's got an ability to dribble with the ball, shield it, eye for a pass as well. But he's also got the movement to be a striker and score goals. And you know, the finish for his ruled out goal and the movement was terrific. The movement, the strength, and the pass for Bergvall's winner was terrific. He's now got 17 goal involvements in 27 games, 11 goals, 6 assists, and he's just been a brilliant signing. I won't hear a bad thing about him. I can't stop you saying it, but I won't hear it. I'll go la 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 la, because he's just terrific. He's absolutely terrific. He needs to be given a rest, though. That's the only thing I would say. He needs to not be played week in, week out all the time. And that you'll see the best version of him then. But he's been a phenomenal signing, and I think the first rest really needs to come this Sunday at Tamworth against a non-league side. I know there's every chance of a cup upset with anyone that plays anyone in the FA Cup, but also on a 3G pitch, artificial pitch, which you don't really want to put players with any potential hamstring issues or stuff like that on that kind of pitch. I think it's a great chance to give Will Lancashire an opportunity to start again. And try and get himself more experience and minutes as a Spurs player. It just gives Solanke a chance to breathe as well. He needs more senior help, I would say, as well, which will come in the form of Richarlison. He's got another week of training and then he's back. Postecoglou wanted to give him at least 2 weeks of full training before he put him back into football, just to get to lessen the chances of a reoccurrence, which is the massive problem at Spurs this season as well. Spurs are also looking outside for attacking reinforcements. It's widely been out there in the last few days that they've held some discussions with PSG over signing Randell Muani. We spoke about him in the last video. Talk about a potential loan with an option to buy. There's been talk about in the French media that PSG would want an obligation. That might make things tricky. I mean, bearing in mind he was signed for 76 million 18 months ago. I don't know how big that obligation would have to be. I mean, it's also worth pointing out that Spurs would have to beat a lot of opposition and competition to get Muani. He's very much a man in demand right now. But what I would say, if Spurs could push the boat out for someone, it would be him if they're looking for an attacker, because as always, when there's someone I've seen a little bit of, I try to watch as much as possible of, and it's clear he would fit Postecoglou's system. He can play anywhere across the front three. He's got pace, he's got strength, he's got dribbling ability. He can surge to the centre of the pitch, he can surge down the flanks and put that low ball across that Postecoglou wants as well. So he would get so many minutes. yeah, he'd be a major asset to what they want to do. Goals haven't flown as freely at PSG as they had for Eintracht Frankfurt, but sometimes it just doesn't work at a different club, and that's it. This season's fallen out of favour, and he would just be the player that, yeah, like I say, would get so many minutes because he would just be constantly be able to rotate it across the three positions, and suddenly the attacking options would be bolstered so much because in each position you've got him. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. Postecoglou did let slip in his press conference on Tuesday that another attacker would be helping Solanke out in the very near future. He was asked, I think it was Dan from the Standard asked him, do you mean a new signing or an injured player coming back like Richarlison? And he said, he kind of did this big grin as if he'd realised he'd said it. And he said, both. It's hopefully what we can do, but I wouldn't suggest tomorrow. And it was asked, do you mean a centre forward? And he said, no, not a centre forward, but I think we need some help in the front half if we can get it. Obviously, Wilson's still a fair way off. Richie's coming back, which we've got to be really careful with him. We've got to try and keep him back. Again, it's got to be the right fit. Is that going to happen this window? I'm not sure, but we know that all being well in 7 days, Richie's back and he'll definitely help Dom for sure. But yeah, it's everything he said fitted Muani as well. So let's keep an eye on that. See what happens. We're at that kind of stage now where kind of have to keeping a check even as I'm doing these things because anything can be popping up as we're going. And a deal like that, it's going to suddenly progress, isn't it? It's one of those where because it's Tamworth next, you probably don't have to rush and get it done in the next day or two. But in an ideal world, you could get someone like that in for, for the North London derby would be a huge boost. But let's see. Like I say, there's a lot of competition there as well. They're not going to just walk in and get him. They're going to have to fight for him. There's been other links as well. We've had Marcus Rashford. That's been another one that's popped up in the last couple of days. He's an interesting one. Spurs have shown interest in him in the past. I understand there currently haven't been any discussions over him at the club. But I would say his situation is one to watch for probably most clubs during this window because much of it depends on how desperate Man United become. Because if they just want him off the books and he's sent out on loan and they take a hefty whack of his very big wages, then you'll suddenly see a lot of clubs thinking, well, why not? It looks like his people, I think his relatives, maybe his brother is potentially his agent. I can't remember. It looks like they're kind of shopping him around Italy right now and speaking to various clubs in Serie A about him. But it's an interesting one. I'd probably think in terms of versatility, although they're roughly similar in some aspects, I think Muani probably I see as a slightly better fit. But I do think Rashford would work as well in Postecoglou's system. But yeah, I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think Muani appears to be one they would like. But they've got to get past other people to get there for him. And never a bad thing when you're trying to convince if you need to convince a player to come to just beat in Liverpool in a game. That's always a decent way of selling yourself. But they do need senior help, these players. They do need some new faces just to give the kind of other senior players a rest and rotate more and to help nourish the youngsters' development, I suppose, is a way of looking at it as well. The centre-back issue is an interesting one because there's one part of me that clearly sees that Dragoshin and Gray can't play every 3 days as a centre-back. One of them is probably going to have to play against Tamworth at least. But then you've also got the flip side of it that the other 3 centre-backs are going to be back in a couple of weeks' time. So what do you do? Do you bring in a centre-back, which I think you kind of just have to at this point, even just a short-term loan, but then very swiftly, that player coming in is going to be 5th choice, 4th or 5th choice. Technically, you're further down the pecking order if you're really seeing Gray as an excellent option at centre-back now. And also, can you sell that to a player? Yeah, come in. And by the way, you're going to drop like a stone down the pecking order within a couple of weeks. It's an interesting one. It's one of those where, had it been done on January the 1st, and Spurs got in there quick, got it done, you couldn't really argue with it. But now we're, 9 days into January, it's kind of like, is it actually going to be that helpful? Or again, like we said about the left back, do you look to bring in someone that fits the system perfectly, steal a march on the others? Because that's part of the way of getting Kinsky, was that a lot of other clubs, from what I'm told, were looking to get him in the summer. And they weren't really ready to go for him now. And Spurs were like, no, we need him now as well. We can play right now. And maybe you do that with a centre-back. Maybe you mitigate the fact that maybe a centre-back goes next summer. Whether it... maybe Romero, I don't know. A lot of the buzz around Real Madrid and stuff like that. Maybe you start to plan a bit with that in mind. I don't know. But yeah, it is interesting now. You've got that kind of issue with the players coming back, and how does that work? Other senior player that impressed me, I've got to say, is Bissouma. So it was excellent. It was really, really good. This is one of those games where he's really on point. And even though he picked up a 32nd minute yellow card, and you kind of thought, oh no, but actually he was very disciplined. He managed a remarkable 18 defensive actions during the game, which was double the next players on the list, which were Spence and Van Dijk, who had 9 each. So Bissouma made 6 interceptions, 4 ball recoveries, 6 clearances, 2 headed clearances, 1 block, and also at the other end made 4 passes into the final third. He was terrific. And he and all of these players last night, they gave themselves a chance at Anfield. That was a worry, wasn't it? Let's be honest. We were worried that Spurs were going to go to Anfield and the game could even be over, or it would be maybe 0-0. But they've just given themselves this one extra little advantage going there. It's going to be an incredibly tough game. But with injury timescales, you would imagine that they'll have Romero, Van der Ven and Davies all will be back and potentially, playing by then, and then had a couple of games under their belt. So that's a big thing as well. It's Spurs, so there may well be other injuries, but they also may have new signings as well. So it's going to be a different game to the one that we saw in the league, certainly. And it'll be a different game to last night as well. And who knows? Who knows? Like I said, they're at half-time, they're 1-0 up. They've got to go there and try and get themselves through to the final. The other game, Newcastle-Arsenal, that's going to be an interesting one as well. At the current moment, it looks like Newcastle will be making their way to the final. And we saw how Spurs played against Newcastle in both games this season. So they've got to put in a special performance at Anfield if they're going to get through. But first up, we're getting too far in the future. Got Tamworth on Sunday. I'm heading along to that, which will be really interesting. People might remember my background before I started doing Premier League stuff was did a lot of non-league football as well. So love to see them get their moment in the spotlight. It'll be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. Last time when we went to Marine, wasn't it? It was all COVID times, pandemic times, so there was no crowd. Whereas now you're going to get to see just the town loving the experience. It's going to be cool. So he's got to be careful with the team. He can't completely go mad with the rotation. He's going to have to leave a few strong players in there just to make sure that they don't have any horrible cup slip-ups. You could maybe give Jan Min-hyuk his debut. He was on the bench last night. Obviously, very, very early days for him. It's a big, big jump for him. He's going to go on his journey now of adapting to the game. But that could be a good opportunity for him to get some minutes. Mikey Moore back on the bench last night as well, which was great. Is it too soon for him to start? Maybe. We'll see. At least he could get some game time on Sunday. Alfie Dorrington, perhaps, gives one of the centre-backs a rest. You'd probably think you'd play him maybe alongside Dragishin for the first half, just to give him that kind of having an older player alongside him. And then maybe second half, maybe a Graham Dragishin play a half each, I don't know. Again, that kind of shows the situation they're in. You'd think Sergio Reguilon probably starts at left back, just to give one of Pedro Porro or Jed Spence a rest. Maddison and Sarr, they're both suspended last night, so they probably come back in as well. And as I said, that artificial turf, that 3G pitch is going to be one that Postecoglou has been very wary of maybe putting certain players on. Even someone like Sonny, and an older player that's had a hamstring injury recently, it's a difficult one to put him out there in that. I mean, you'd imagine probably Timo Werner starts, like I say, Lancashire, and then maybe you put Yang or Moore on the right. I just don't know whether that's changing it too much. It's difficult. And does Bergvall play again? Do you play Basuma again? We'll see what Bentancur's kind of where he's at by Sunday, and whether he's in a position to play or whether they just take it cautiously with him. Let me know. Let me know in the comments what kind of team you would put out, because let's be honest, we love the magic of the cup. We just don't want Tottenham to be one of the victims of that magic. They've just got to keep rolling now. It was an important win against Liverpool. And the players and Postecoglou, and they just need to start building a little bit of momentum now. Go to Tamworth, don't have any issues, give some players a rest by all means, but just go through it and do a professional job. Then you've got that North London derby. If you can go into that in a good way, then yeah, hopefully things will start pushing towards a positive destination in terms of the results as well. I was just checking the fixture calendar, how it then shakes up. It's Everton away, isn't it, next, with whoever their new manager will be. I think Moyes was potentially going back there. And you've got Hoffenheim, then you've got Leicester at home, then you've got Elfsborg, Brentford away. There's a little chance to start trying to get some momentum, but it's Tottenham. Do we do momentum at Tottenham? They did have that run, wasn't it, when it was like, what was it? Was it 10 wins out of 12? I can't remember what it was now, but they need to get back into that kind of way of doing things. Consistency, please. That'd be lovely. But yeah, that's a good first step yesterday. Now it's about building on it. But yeah, good fun. Enjoyed that. Really enjoyed the game. And even the press conference with Postecoglou, it was a good 10, 11-minute press conference, which they're not normally that long after a game. Most of it was that monologue. But just good to see him in a happy place, and the players and the coaching staff would have loved that as well. And we all did. It was good fun. But please keep it going. Right, I'll be back on Monday with a video, I'd imagine, after Sunday's game, and hopefully some more good stuff to talk about. Maybe some different players to talk about if some of those other players do get their chance. So, yeah, time to head off. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.